Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Adonis Flores.
Thank you, everybody. So I'm going to start my story today in the summer of 1997. My mom, my brother, and I, we had just landed in the Chicago O'Hare Airport. I was 8 years old. And not only was this our first time in the US, but it was also our first time flying in an airplane. And most importantly, we were visiting Grandma. And Mom, please don't take this the wrong way, but when I was a child, I probably did love my grandma a lot more than I did my parents. I love you all equally now. Pero siempre he sido bien consentido por mi Magalín. I've always been very spoiled by my grandma. So I was so excited. It was a very exciting time in my life. And after 5 long hours of driving from Chicago to Detroit, we finally arrived here. And waiting for us at the porch with wide open arms is my grandma. And I run to her, I hug her and kiss her and cry of happiness. It's one of my most cherished memories of my childhood. And immediately, as soon as we go in and sit down for breakfast, I remember my aunts and uncles having a conversation with my mom, asking her, how long are you going to be here for? ¿Cuánto tiempo van a estar por acá? And my mom would just answer, we will see. Ya veremos. And, time went by and they had the same conversation and she kept answering, we will see. So summer came and went. And it was the first day of school. And that day, my mom decided to enroll me at Priest Elementary School, the school right around the corner. And that day was my first time ever in my life seeing so many people from all over the world. African-American families, Middle Eastern families, LatinX families from Mexico, Puerto Rico, parts of Latin America, and even some Eastern European families. And that day, I knew not only that school here was going to be a lot more different than my school in Mexico, but we were not just visiting Grandma. We were going to be here for a while. So time went by, a few months passed, and our visa expired. And even though I was a young kid, I knew what that meant. I knew that meant that the government of this country no longer welcomed us. That at any moment, my mom could be deported. I could be deported. Our family could be separated by a deportation. And growing up, I remember living with that fear day after day. I remember whenever my mom came home late from work because she worked overtime or she stopped along the way to buy groceries, I would just panic and I would start crying and just praying to God to please bring my mom home safe this evening. So that was my childhood. But like every child, when we grow up and become teenagers and feel invincible, we get rid of a lot of our fears. And thankfully, that was one of the fears that I got rid of. And not only did I get rid of that fear, but I started realizing that it was wrong how our laws were treating my family and how they were making me feel as a child. And I remember the first time I was called to action. It was the Sunday before May 1st, 2006. We were at church. And at the end of service, a community leader, his name is Efrain Samuido, he stepped up at the pulpit and made an announcement. No compren, no trabajen, no vayan a la escuela, vengan a la marcha. He said, don't shop, don't go to work, don't go to school, come to the march. The Congress of this country is trying to pass a law that will make everybody in this church a criminal and will put everybody in this church in jail. And so I look at my mom and I ask her, are we going? Sí, mijo. Okay. So that day, we go to the march. And we're in a sea of people. I've never seen so many people, families, moms pushing their strollers, People from all over Latin America, Puerto Ricans, of course, were there too, Mexicans, Central Americans, even our black and white neighbors. It was just a sea of people. And I felt the power of the people. Se ve, se siente, el pueblo está presente. Se ve, se siente, el pueblo está presente. Yes, we can. Yes, we can. Yes, we can. Yes, we can. Imagine that in a sea of thousands and thousands of people. And I did not know what we had accomplished that day, but now I know that what we did was we stopped the Sensen burner bill, one of the most racist bills in the country, and that was done by the people. So that was my first time experiencing the power of the people, and that day I made a big mistake. I took for granted the power of the people. I thought other people are fighting for my rights. I went home, and for many years I didn't do anything. And it wasn't until January 20, 2009, that it finally hit our family. My Uncle Ivan, my mom's youngest brother, got detained by ICE. And as President Obama was taking the oath of office that day, we were hustling, trying to find our uncle. Where is Ivan? And I remember that night, Grandma was so worried she couldn't go to sleep until the next day when finally my uncle called us from Juarez and said, I got deported, but I'm fine. Don't worry about me. It was in that moment that I realized I cannot take the power of the people for granted anymore. I need to do something about this. And I started looking for opportunities and places to be involved, to unite the people and fight for these changes that our community so desperately needed. And one of those first places was with a group of young undocumented students in Detroit. That summer, it was summer 2010, there was a group of young undocumented students doing a pilgrimage all the way from Miami to the White House, hundreds of miles. It took them months to get there. And on the day that they were going to arrive at the White House, President Obama wasn't going to be there. He was going to be here in Ann Arbor, Michigan, giving a commencement address to the graduating class of 2010. So we decided we need to take that message to the president. Let's do a pilgrimage. And we decided we were going to walk from Western High School to Ann Arbor to the Big House to demand that the president support the DREAM Act. And the first day, I remember being very discouraged. It was a very small group of us, just a handful of us walking, and a radio DJ. But mile after mile, I started seeing the support grow. People were calling us, crying, thanking us for doing this. People were meeting us on the way, giving us water and food, welcoming us into their mosque and church and synagogue. And then when we were just a few miles away from the Big House, a rally of hundreds of people show up and marched along us in front of the Big House. And once again, I witnessed the power of the people. When we were marching down the street in front of the Big House chanting, education, not deportation, education, not deportation, education, not deportation. That afternoon, I remember feeling that same feeling in my stomach that I felt on May 1st, 2006. And it was because of efforts, not just of our group here in Detroit, but of thousands of other undocumented students across the country, that President Obama finally came out saying he supported the DREAM Act. But we didn't win it. When the DREAM Act came up for a vote in the Senate, we were 4 votes short. And I remember that a lot of things were really wrong with the world and with what our family was experiencing in that fall. Not only had we lost the DREAM Act, we were in the financial crisis in this country. My mom was struggling to pay the bills. And a lot of things just felt wrong. I went in a really deep depression and had a lot of drinking problems, trying to cope with it with alcohol. And I remember that when I wasn't with my friends, I would just be at work like a zombie, being there because I had to be there. And when I was at home alone, I would just cry myself to sleep in my bed. And that lasted for months, until finally I decided that I needed professional help. I went out and looked for counseling. And that helped me realize, you know what, there's a lot of things that are out of my control, like changing the laws of this country. I cannot do that by myself. But there's many things that I can really do by myself and have under my control. During the marches, I came out as undocumented and unafraid, but I had to come out again. I had to accept me for who I am. I had to accept my sexuality as a gay, Latino, undocumented man. And that felt... I remember that after I accepted that and I came out to my best friends, my cousins, my family, I finally started seeing the light at the end of the tunnel of this deep depression. And I started finally seeing the path that I needed to follow, not just for my own well-being, but to change the lives of others, continuing the fight. And thankfully, other youth, undocumented youth, kept fighting while I was in this deep depression. That summer, they did a sit-in in 30 different states in President Obama's re-election campaign offices and twisted his arm into creating the DACA program. And that program stopped the deportations, not just of myself, and gave us work permits, but of over 800,000 undocumented students like myself. And that was when I finally started feeling the fruits of the power of the people. And that gave me the courage to keep fighting. Many things were still wrong with the world. Hundreds of deportations were still going on in Detroit, millions in general across the country. But we were able to stop a handful here and there. We were able to stop, temporarily at least, the deportation of friends like Jorge Garcia. We were able to win tuition equality. Things were improving a little bit until 2016. Election night, I remember working so hard, knocking at the doors, turning out voters, coming home, waiting to hear the results, to hear that Donald Trump was our new president. I couldn't sleep that night. I remember talking to Marcos, my significant other, and asking him, what are we going to do if I get deported? Are you going to go with me? Is this going to be the end of our relationship? Where are we going to live? Are we going to go to Mexico, Central America, Europe, Canada? What are we going to do? And we did not know. But the only thing we knew was that if we got split, it would be devastating for us. And so we decided that we needed to get married. Because thankfully, just like I was fighting for immigrant rights, there were other groups out there fighting for LGBTQ rights, and they won marriage equality just a few years before. So that December, we got married. And about a year and a half later, I get my green card. And please don't go out with a misconception that if you marry a U.S. citizen, you get a green card. That option is only available for a very, very small, specific type of cases, like my case. Most people cannot. And that was the case of my friend Jorge Garcia. He got deported on Martin Luther King Day, 2017, by the Trump administration. We're still fighting for him. And his wife, Cindy Garcia, is such a strong fighter. She's one of the people that keep me inspired in this fight. But with the blessing of getting this green card, After 18 years of living in Detroit, I finally get the opportunity to go back to my home country, to visit the land that witnessed my birth and my childhood, Guanajuato. And I remember when I was there was all kinds of emotions. I was happy to be back, but I also felt insecure and undeserving, like there's nothing special about me than other undocumented families. Why do I deserve this green card? Why do I have it and not them? I was also feeling very insecure about whether or not I was going to be welcome. How am I going to respond to the question, how did you get your green card? Am I going to tell them I married the man of my dreams? Are they going to accept me even though I'm gay? I wasn't sure. There was so much uncertainty. But finally, I decided to go out and take a walk on the outskirts of my mom's village. And it wasn't until I took my shoes and my socks and grounded myself with my bare feet on the land where I grew up, looking at El Cerro de los Agustinos, the hills around me, that I realized I do belong. Not only do I belong in Guanajuato, I belong in Detroit. Not only am I from Guanajuato, I'm from Detroit. Soy de Guanajuato y soy de Detroit. Not only do I deserve that green card, but so does every undocumented immigrant that hasn't had that opportunity to go visit their loved ones in Mexico or other parts of the world after decades, years of being separated. They all deserve it too. And not only a green card, they deserve equal rights. We all deserve them. And it was on that moment that I decided I couldn't give up. This is a lifetime commitment. I'm in this fight. I'm in this fight for the rest of my life with all of you because this is a lifetime commitment, not just for immigrant rights, but for racial justice, economic justice, and gender justice. We're in this together, and thank you. I really want to thank all of you for being here with me, for being in the fight with me, and fighting alongside. Thank you.
Adonis Flores.